A warm good evening to everyone. So welcome to the 12th webinar in the Thursday webinar series organized by IEEE Malabar subsection. As you know, we have started this weekly webinar series from June 1st onwards. So this is the 12th talk in this series. On the average, we have seen that around 100 participants are there. 100 plus participants are there for each of these webinars. So we pick up very interesting topics which is beneficial for all the students across Kerala for the Thursday webinar. So today we have a very versatile personality, a medical doctor, Dr. Karthik Anandaraman from Bangalore, who is going to talk on a very, very important topic. I'm sure this will be extremely beneficial for all of you. So regarding the webinar, its rules to be, the rules to be followed by the participants and the timing and other details will be told you by our moderator, Dr. Shabira TP. So I'm handing over to Dr. Shabira for introducing our speaker and telling the rules for this webinar. Over to you, Dr. Shabira. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. A warm good evening to one and all. Our today's guest is Dr. Karthik Anandaraman. Dr. Karthik Anandaraman is the Director of E-Pharmacy and Private Label Business at MedLife, India's largest e-health platform. Karthik is a trained medical doctor with an MBBS degree from Bangalore University, a postgraduate MBA in marketing from Manipal University, and a super specialization MBA from Yale University, USA. Karthik is the recipient of 30 top influencers in Indian healthcare industry, January 2020. Most influential marketing leaders listing by World Marketing Congress twice in a row in November 2015 and in November 2016. Leading industry awards from Frost & Sullivan, Economic Times Best Healthcare Brands and Brand Trust Awards 2016. He was earlier the head of business unit, metabolics or branded formulations or biosimilars at Biocon Limited, an innovation-driven global biotechnology company. He was earlier the chief marketing officer of BPL Medical Technologies and Penlon Limited, Goldman Sachs portfolio company. He has also led marketing for GE Healthcare for molecular imaging and computed tomography business and has held senior managerial positions with leading pharmaceutical organizations like AstraZeneca and MSD. Karthik was one of the core team members responsible for the launch of South Asia's first patented primary care pharmaceutical brand, Januvia, which later went on to become the largest pharmaceutical launch of South Asia in 2008-9. Karthik has also had a stint as an entrepreneur, launching one of India's first chronic disease management companies in 2010-11. On behalf of IEEE MSS, I invite Karthik to the webinar on simple tips to win over the pandemic, SMS. Before handing over to Karthik sir, I have some instruction to the participants. Participants must disable your audio and video in order to save the data and for smooth conduct of the program. Only speakers' audio will be enabled for smooth lecturing. Any queries can be informed through chat window, and this will be discussed at the end of the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Dr. Shabira, thank you so much. Mr. Madhukumar, Mr. Sabit, thank you very much for inviting me. And I think no better time than I think, as we rightly say, the eye sees what the mind knows. The eye will not see what the mind does not know. I think the right to the right information is what is critical. And if there is one important thing that all of us need to kind of keep in mind, is that panic will not help any of us. So therefore, having the right knowledge, the right information is something that actually does not create the need for panic. So because with information, you get confidence to face the pandemic, or confidence to face any adversity. So that being said, I think all of you are very accomplished engineers. People come from very strong technology background here, from IEEE and its family. So necessity is the mother of all invention. So naturally, I think COVID, if there is one important thing that COVID has brought in to the industry, to humanity, it is actually digital transformation. Healthcare, in a way, was kind of lagging behind compared to many other industries when it comes to adapting digital transformation. And I think COVID has created the right opportunity to do it. And one very, very critical thing that happened, which is possibly the best that our country had, was after a very long wait, on 25th of March, the Telemedicine Society of India guidelines were formally approved. And telemedicine was formally approved as a way of offering clinical service and consultation by doctors to their patients. And I think that led the path, and it laid a very strong foundation of healthcare digitally transforming itself. But that being said, I think the topic that has been given to me is to understand how can we kind of face this pandemic with very, very simple, I would say, techniques. And it's mentioned in the topic itself that it is SMS. So what is this SMS? I think SMS is as simple as sanitizing the hand, that is the first S. Second one is wearing the mask, that is the M. And the third one is social distancing of a minimum 6 feet. So that is precisely what SMS stands for. So social distancing, masks, and sanitization is what basically kind of falls under the ambit of SMS. Having said that, I think what I would like to do is to kind of start with a presentation, which is kind of going to give us a brief overview of how this pandemic began, what is the nature of this virus, right? And in between, I'll give you a few insights as to what should be considered as a good vaccine, because now, as we know, there are hundreds of clinical trials currently ongoing worldwide to kind of find a vaccine solution for this pandemic to take care of this viral infection. So therefore, there are multiple things to be taken care for a good vaccine to kind of come into the market. So I will share my screen, and do let me know if you are able to see my presentation. And yeah. So is my presentation visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible. So it will be better if you can. Okay, thank you, sir. It's okay.
Yeah. So I'm presenting in a slideshow mode. Hope this is visible. So I would like to start by giving a quick overview of the pandemic itself. I'm sure there is a lot of information you would have already gained by now, regarding this pandemic. And as we know, this particular virus, the coronavirus, as we call it as, the actual scientific terminology, as we know, is SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, CoV2. SARS-CoV-2 is the way how we call this virus. Many a times people confuse between coronavirus infection and what is COVID-19. So therefore, the virus is called SARS-CoV-2, and the infection that is caused by this virus is what we call as the COVID-19 infection. That is typically how it is kind of the terminology is. It is an RNA virus. So deoxyribose nucleic acids, as you know, it's an RNA virus. And then it has a crown-like appearance. And as we know, there were previous versions of this SARS in 2002 and the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, which actually was MERS in 2012, seen primarily in the Middle Eastern countries in GCC. And this novel coronavirus is a mutant version of that, where, and the reason why we say that we need to sanitize our hands with alcohol, or the WHO has come up with a guideline that, we need to wash our hands with soap and water. The reason why they say so is, you will see that answer in the 4th bullet point here. The virus has got an outer lipid layer. And this lipid layer is immediately destroyed when it is coming in contact with detergent, soap, or even alcohol. And that's the reason we say that we need to wash our hands with soap and water, or with alcohol-based sanitizer with about 70% of alcohol concentration in it, because soap and water or alcohol basically destroys the outer lipid layer, which renders the virus inactive. So when the virus becomes inactive, it is unable to multiply. And once the virus is unable to multiply, it will no longer be able to cause much of infection. So therefore, that is the reason, or the kind of logic behind why hand washing with soap and water or with the alcohol-based sanitizer is recommended. And as we know, this new disease is caused by the novel coronavirus termed as COVID-19. It emerged for the very first time in December 2019 in China. And of course, it has really kind of gone worldwide. As we know, it has impacted multiple countries now. How does it spread? As all of us know, it spreads through droplets while the patient who's infected is either coughing or sneezing. Generally, the virus travels to around 1 to 1.5 meters, not more than that, and then it settles down on the surface. And then close personal contact with an infected person, such as touching or shaking hands with an infected person, leads to the transmission of the infection. Or touching of any object or a surface with a virus on it could also potentially lead to an infection. And now there are multiple solutions available to take care of surface disinfection also, so that surface-based transmission is limited to a great extent. Now, the way how human body behaves is very different. So not every infected person develops the infection in the same number of days. The incubation period can vary between 2 to 14 days. Now, what does that mean? There are some people who may start developing symptoms of an infection even just 2 days after being exposed to an infected patient. There are some patients who may not develop any symptoms for up to 2 weeks, and only after 2 weeks they may start developing an infection. But on an average, it takes about 5 to 6 days of incubation period, after which we get to know about the symptoms. Now, what kind of symptoms would people typically look at? You will get similar, upper respiratory tract infection, or URTI as we call. So there'll be a little bit of a cough, a sore throat, and it's a dry cough many a times. And then there is slight fever in many people. And then there will be a high index of suspicion, especially how would you differentiate a COVID infection versus a common cold or an influenza? This is the commonest question people have. The first thing to watch out for is there a change in the voice? And have we lost our sensation of smell and taste? These are few things we need to look at. If there is a change in the voice, if there is a loss of smell sensation or the taste sensation, and if there is breathlessness, very, very important to watch out for difficulty in breathing or breathlessness. If there is breathlessness, then the chances of the patient having a potential SARS-CoV-2 infection or a COVID-19 infection is there. But it can only be confirmed by doing specific tests. And I'll briefly talk to you about the tests. So there are 3 types of tests which are available. Okay. One, the gold standard test is what we call as the RT-PCR test. So they will actually put a small swab in the throat. If there is a nasal discharge, they will take a swab of the nasal discharge, and then they will actually pass it through the RT-PCR procedure. And then we actually look for viral load. And that is when we report whether the patient is positive, whether the virus has been found or not found. The other 2 tests typically look at the way how the body responds to the virus itself. One of the tests which has been available for a very long time is called the antibody test. Antibody is nothing but when the body is exposed to a virus or any infection causing microorganism, the very first thing that the body does is the body has got its own inbuilt immune system. And the immune system starts to develop antibodies to fight against the virus. It's a protein or a defense mechanism the body produces to fight against the virus. So therefore, what happens, antibodies start developing in the body. Broadly, there are 3 kinds of antibodies that develop. The 3 types are called IgA antibody, IgM antibody, and IgG antibody. Now, AMG, this is how we remember it. IgA and IgM antibody develop initially, typically from the starting the 2nd to the 3rd day up to around 2 weeks, up to the 14th day. These antibodies are there. Generally, when you do an antibody test, it has to be done after the 6th or the 7th day of potential exposure. because only then you find an antibody. If you do an antibody test before the 5th day, it is very likely that it will come out as negative because the antibody would not yet have risen in the blood to the titer which is detectable. So therefore, antibody test should always be done after the 6th or the 7th day of exposure. Only then we will be able to conclusively say whether the patient has developed an antibody or not. Okay. So the other test that is available is called antigen test. So antigen test looks for what we call as the spike antigen, which is basically the spike kind of thing which is available around the body of the virus. It detects the spike antigen. So there are now multiple types of spike antigen tests which are there. And very happy to say that we were dependent on imports for antigen for a long time, while Indian companies had already started to produce antibody tests and RT-PCR tests. And now recently, happy to say that Indian companies have also started to produce antigen tests. So our Prime Minister's message of being Atmanirbhar or self-dependent and make in India, I think is becoming true. Especially a lot of Indian companies have now developed the competency of manufacturing essential COVID-related products, including medicines like remdesivir, favipiravir, and itolizumab, and dexamethasone. And on the technology side, Indian companies have started to make local ventilators, pulse oximeters, thermometers, etc. And at the same time, now Indians have started to manufacture the detection kits also. So a lot of work is going on in our country, thanks to our scientists and entrepreneurs. So beyond the common symptoms of fever, cough, breathlessness, sore throat, there are some patients who may experience diarrhea, vomiting, headache, myalgia or muscle pain and fatigue also. But what is very, very important to note is that more than 90% of the patients will have very, very mild infection. They will not suffer from a severe infection at all. But if the patient has got a comorbid condition like a heart disease, like a cardiovascular disease, or a high blood pressure, or diabetes, or lung infection like chronic obstructive lung disease or pulmonary disease as we call, or asthma, or if the patient has a liver illness or a chronic kidney disease or cancer, these are conditions where the immune system becomes weak. So this is very, very important to note. That is the reason we always say that patients with any of these conditions, heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, COPD, asthma, chronic liver or kidney disease or cancer, first we should take control of that particular disease first. Only when that disease is under control, the immune system will come close to normal and the body has its own natural way of fighting the infection. But if the immune system is suppressed because of any of these reasons, we see that the body's inborn capacity of fighting the infection goes down significantly. And that's the very important reason that immune system has to be kept strong. Now, in terms of its presentation, naturally, many people will not even know that they got the infection. So as we speak today, I was reading some published reports that in India, what we typically call herd immunity we will only know when we test for antibodies. Even if we have been exposed to the virus, all of us start developing antibodies. And when you detect antibody and the antibody has remained in our blood for a continuous duration of 2 to 3 months or even more, that is when we say that we have gotten immunity to it. So the potential herd immunity in our country still is in the range of around 22 to 25%. So it will take some time for the country to develop a herd immunity, because only when close to 60 to 70% of the population has assumed or has developed the antibodies when we say that we have assumed herd immunity. We still have a long way to go. There are vaccines in development, as we know, but broadly, majority of people will not even know that they actually got a COVID infection and they even recovered because they remain asymptomatic. There are few people who developed either mild, moderate or severe symptoms, and that is what we need to watch out for. And again, very, very critical. In order to prevent getting an infection, we need to follow SMS. If you get an infection, in order to prevent spreading that infection to others, we need to follow SMS. And third, very, very important, even after someone recovers from an infection and is completely cured of the infection, it is very important to remember that even after the recovery, many patients seem to have developed lung damage, liver damage, kidney disease. Many of them develop myocarditis, which is an inflammation of the heart muscle itself. So we have to make sure that immune system is always kept very strong, and that is what will see us through, right? So that is very, very critical. These are some of the common laboratory investigations that hospitals do, especially if a patient has a severe type of an infection. and the patient needs an admission in the hospital or the ICU, there are these tests given. It's called the complete blood count test or the ESR test, lymphocyte test, which is the white blood cell test, C-reactive protein, iron test, procalcitonin, liver function test, kidney function or renal function test, and then D-dimer, troponin T, and RT-PCR tests, as we know. I spoke about the antibodies, the IgM and the IgG antibodies. And now, since most of you are technology people, there is a fantastic work which is actually happening in the area of artificial intelligence in COVID-19 diagnosis and detection. So at least I am aware of 2 to 3 good companies who are actually working on algorithms in artificial intelligence, which actually looks at serial chest x-rays and CT scans. And they are able to predict with a fair degree of accuracy as to which pneumonia patch in the chest x-ray or which pneumonia patch in the CT scan is a COVID infection and which one is not a COVID infection. So that way, there is a huge scope for machine learning and artificial intelligence to play a very critical role in the diagnosis of severe COVID infection, especially through x-rays, chest x-rays and CT scan images. So that's a great achievement on the technology side. And naturally, in terms of management, so it is only symptomatic management. A lot of people do recover. There is absolutely no special treatment required. Only if the infection becomes very severe is when we give antiviral drugs like remdesivir or favipiravir, which are now approved. Even some of the old drugs like hydroxychloroquine, dexamethasone, itolizumab have also shown very good response, especially the way how itolizumab works is it binds to the CD6 cell, as we call, which reduces the lymphocyte activation, and hence it reduces the cytokine storm. Cytokine storm is what used to cause severe sepsis. So that severe sepsis is significantly controlled with itolizumab. So therefore, there are a lot of these good technologies and medicines now available to manage it. So there is nothing to worry. So the key here is to follow SMS and to manage immune system and to keep immune system very strong. Now, additionally, there are a couple of things that we can do in terms of maintaining the immune system well, and there are some home monitoring, simple home monitoring that can be done as well. So some of the patients, you will see that people are saying that you will need there are a couple of things to be kept at home. So what are the things? One, you can use a pulse oximeter at home as a simple device. You can check your oxygen concentration, oxygen saturation in the capillary blood. Normal oxygen saturation is recommended to be between 98% to 100% saturation. Even if it falls below 98, a little bit is okay. But if it comes to 93% saturation on SpO2 or pulse oximetry, as we call, that is when it means that the lung function is declining. It could be an early detection of a COVID infection or any other type of a lung infection, which reduces oxygen saturation. So pulse oximeter is a must-have at home. Second one is a thermometer. You can either use a digital thermometer or you can use a forehead non-contact thermometer, as we call it, as infrared thermometer. But monitoring temperature using a thermometer is very critical. Third one, for patients especially who have lung disease, chronic bronchitis, if there are chronic smokers at home, a very important asthma, there is a very simple device available called the peak flow meter. It is a handheld device which can actually measure normal lung function at home. It will also point out if the lung function is getting compromised. Early detection can happen. So peak flow meter is one important device which can be kept at home. A BP monitor, a digital BP monitor is very important, especially for patients with heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes. So monitor your blood pressure, keep your blood pressure under control. It will do the immunity a lot good and ward off many of the infections, including COVID infection. So pulse oximetry, thermometer, the non-invasive blood pressure monitor, right? And peak flow meter for measuring lung function. These are some important things. There are a few good herbal medicines, age-old Ayurveda, so neem, ashwagandha, which boost the immunity. Very good to take it. Vitamin C is amongst the strongest nutraceutical with very strong immune boosting property. So vitamin C, vitamin D3, these give very good immune boosting effect also. Now, only if the patient is severely ill, is admitted, then they will need oxygen. So oxygen cylinders are available. Some patients, oxygen concentrator machine is available, can be used at home if you have senior citizens above 60, 65 years of age. where you suspect that the oxygen saturation is going down. It's always good to keep an oxygen concentrator device machine at home. It's easily available. And therefore, as all of us know, there is one therapy which is currently in, I would say, in clinical evaluation. We call it as the convalescent plasma therapy. Typically, we take the plasma from patients who have recovered from COVID infection. And this plasma consists of the antibodies against the virus. And this can be used to kind of save lives, especially in very, very severely ill patients. So if you know of people who have suffered from COVID infection, have recovered, please request them to donate their blood, plasma. So you don't have to donate a lot of blood. It's a very little volume of blood they take. They separate the blood cells and the plasma component separately, and that can actually go on to save a life. So please recommend, I would personally recommend and request all my friends, relatives, friends, colleagues who have recovered from COVID infection to please consider donating their plasma. It can save many lives, in fact. Now, vaccine is in development. Now, coming to vaccine development, a couple of important points I want to mention. It is known that there are about 5 different genotypes or strains of this virus, which has undergone multiple types of mutations. In India, there are 2 strains which are making the rounds. Now, any vaccine is considered a good vaccine if it can actually cover for all the known 5 different genotypes of the virus. Only then it will be able to successfully neutralize the virus, and it will be able to develop a good antibody titer in the body. So I think all vaccine manufacturers are working towards that to get a wholesome, comprehensive vaccine. But at the end of the day, it is always important to take protective measures to prevent getting this infection. And that will only happen with the right knowledge, the right information about it. 1, I think isolate yourself from any known person with a suspected disease or a confirmed disease. 2, always use the mask. As I told you, use masks, frequent hand washing or sanitization, and social distancing of minimum, 1 meter or even at least 6 feet is what is recommended. And cough etiquette, even when all of us can get a cough, sneeze, it is absolutely natural. So avoid touching of the face, the nose, or the eyes. It's always recommended that we cough into our elbow, and if you cough into your hand, then always please hand wash or sanitize the hand after that immediately. So these are some simple things we can do. I would recommend this website. It's called Mask for All. I think Mask for All is a very critical thing. Many people say that I need to go and get my N95 mask. My friends, N95 is required for doctors. Please leave it to the doctors. You and I do not need N95 masks, especially when we are just working from our homes, from our offices as normal citizens, right? What we need is a cloth mask, a fabric mask. There are good quality cloth masks that are available, which are washable, reusable. Many of them can even be washed for 30 times or 50 times. And many of these fabric masks are made out of fabric, which has a nanotechnology feature. Many of them have a coronavirus killing feature also. And they are also certified to have antimicrobial features. So therefore, fabric mask is more than sufficient. Now, by just wearing a mask as socially responsible citizens, see how much good can we make to the society. Look at the right side of this slide. If you see, as I told you, many of us can be asymptomatic carriers of COVID. We don't know ourselves. But if an asymptomatic carrier is around, and if there is another person who's actually wearing a mask, still the risk of us transmitting our infection to that other person is very high. Now, when you have an asymptomatic carrier, but that person is responsible, is wearing a mask, but people around you is not wearing a mask. So our risk of transmitting our infection to others is low. But if everyone is wearing a mask, both the asymptomatic carrier and the people around, the risk of transmission is very, very low. It's almost minuscule. So just by a simple wearing of the mask, you will realize how much good we are able to do to people, right? I would recommend that you visit this website, maskforall.co. It has some wonderful videos and very nice information about the importance of masks. Second important thing a lot of people ask, sir, is it safe to wear a mask and exercise? Absolutely, yes. The masks that are getting manufactured these days are very breathable masks. They don't suffocate you. You can wear a mask. I would recommend you should rather wear a mask, because when you are physically active, when you are walking, jogging, cycling outside, you are doing that in a place where there are other people walking or jogging around you, and you should always wear a mask. Okay, it is very, very important. So do not take this for granted. And by the way, there used to be a concern that it will cause carbon dioxide accumulation in the lungs, carbon monoxide, or, like carbon dioxide toxicity, etc. I think now it is proven beyond that, that none of this happens. So there are good breathable masks which are available. Then coming to the diet, boost the diet with vitamin C, zinc, vitamin D, as I told, vitamin C, zinc, and vitamin D3, 60,000 international units. These are the three very well-known immune boosters. So you can consume them for a month. It will significantly enhance the immunity. But at the same time, also herbal products like neem, ashwagandha also play a very good role as well. But at the end of the day, none of these nutraceuticals, vitamin C or zinc, will be able to boost the immunity unless and until blood sugar is under good control, thyroid is under good control, blood pressure is under good control, the liver and kidneys are functioning normally. That will make sure that the immune system is functioning normally. So it is therefore a wholesome way of keeping, the homeostasis, as we call, that is very, very critical to maintain a good balanced immune system. Now, last but not the least, I think there are some simple healthy habits that we can do, which we can follow to protect our lungs from this coronavirus. I think very, very simple, as I told you, practicing very, very important, that minimum 30 minutes of exercise a day for adults. And now children, honestly, very worrying trend. You see that children these days are just holding their smartphones, mobile phones or tablets or laptops, and now there is no school. So the entire school has come home and everyone is taking online class. So the kids are now sitting for longer hours. They are not going out to play. Okay. So therefore it is important that kids should have a minimum of 60 minutes of physical activity every day. Whether it's inside the home or outside the home does not matter, but kids have to be physically active. Adults have to be physically active. Minimum of 30 to 45 minutes of physical activity in a day is very important. Why is it important? It improves lung function naturally. Number two, it improves blood circulation, reduces blood pressure and blood sugar naturally. It boosts the immune system naturally. So lung function improves with that. And second thing, this is the most important time to kick the butt, as we call. If there are still smokers around amongst people we love in our family and friend circle, this is the most opportune moment to actually quit smoking, because smoking significantly damages the lungs and it predisposes the lung to develop all infections, including coronavirus infection. So therefore, this is the time to actually kick the butt or leave smoking, as we call. It's very, very important to do that. And then eat right. So eat all the foods which are rich in vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin, zinc. And also there are some foods which are rich in omega-3 fatty acids. Okay. So these foods are also very, very critical, important, because omega-3 fatty acids directly has an impact on boosting the antibodies and the T cell response, the immune system response to any kind of infection causing agents. And it is also an antioxidant and it reduces the cytokine storm. So therefore, very, very important that we kind of take care of all these. So I tried to summarize some of these in a simple presentation here. So I would like to stop my presentation here, and I'll be more than happy to kind of take any questions if it is there. Thank you. So Dr. Shabira, Mr. Madhukumar, Sabik, this was the presentation that I had, and thank you very much. I hope I was able to share some information. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay. We got one question, sir. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, please tell me.
Okay, how the Shikokan can change current situation in public places and institutions?
Sure. So this is a new development from a Bangalore-based company. Skeleen is the name of the company. So therefore, yes, I think it is quite a novel innovation. They seem to have a claim that, it can actually make sure that the surface disinfection happens effectively. I'm sure they have done a lot of validation, including, surface mapping, and also they have taken some possibly the swab from the sterilized surfaces and try to see if there are any cultures of bacteria or viruses that are available. But yes, it seems at least from the clinical documents and the testimonials that I have seen, it comes across as a novel innovation. I'm sure some of the early adopters who would actually install some of these in either public spaces or in corporate institutions, offices, etc., they will be able to share more information about its effectiveness. But yes, I think both infrared related and the Shyoscan type of products may certainly be quite useful in surface disinfection.
Thank you, sir. Next, how many still require vaccine in India? That is the next question.
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
I think the question is how much time we have to wait, or that kind of thing.
I could not understand the question completely. If you can repeat that.
The question is how many still required for vaccine in India? That is
how many time?
The question written in chat box.
So how much time is it required to get a vaccine in India?
How much time?
Yeah.
I think.
Okay, hard to say. But yeah, all I can say is I think the first 2 vaccines which will come out to be the most clinically validated would be the first one from AstraZeneca, which is now being undergoing the last phase of its phase 3 clinical trial in partnership with Oxford University in the UK. So AstraZeneca vaccine has a huge potential to come out, and as per current information, the phase 3 clinical trial is expected to be over by December. And there is an expectation that in January, the large scale manufacturing of this vaccine shall begin. Excuse me. The second one is basically the vaccine from Pfizer-BioNTech. And Pfizer-BioNTech has also gotten into the last stages of phase 3 clinical trials. And that is also expected to come into the market by around February of next year. That will also be one of the large scale vaccines to become available. The only thing that I would like to say for all the Indian companies that are researching on COVID vaccine, be it Serum Institute of India, Bharat Serums, etc., is that I think while it is important regulation-wise to fast-track clinical trials, but the bare minimum, I think, medical ethics, which ensure proper patient safety, is very, very critical to test out, because there is no point rushing into developing a vaccine. And once you start immunizing people with the vaccine, it should not lead to some very serious side effects. So therefore, researching, taking the adequate amount of time to conduct the phase 3 clinical trial, and then coming out with the right regulatory approvals and then launching a vaccine in the market is much better than rushing into getting a vaccine at the earliest. So that is my personal opinion with regards to vaccine development. So long answer short, I think the closest vaccine that we can see coming into India with complete clinical validation and all approvals should be around January, February next year.
Thank you, sir. Next question is, will the corona get cured automatically without any treatment?
Absolutely. We already have so many people as examples for that. So if immune system is strong, our body's immune system is strong enough to fight coronavirus and develop immunity by developing antibody. Absolutely, yes.
So that is not applicable to all, right?
That's not applicable to all. So I also mentioned to whom it is not applicable. So it is not applicable to diabetic people who don't keep their sugars under control. It is not applicable to hypertensives who don't keep their blood pressure under control or cholesterol under control. It is not applicable to people with liver disease, kidney disease, immunology disease, or cancer. So therefore it is important. And thyroid we should not forget. It is not applicable to people who don't keep their thyroid hormones under control. So if we keep these under control, our immunity is as good as a normal individual without those diseases. So therefore, keeping the underlying comorbid disease or disorder under control is the key to maintaining a strong immunity. When you maintain strong immunity, we can fight coronavirus infection.
Okay, sir. Next question is, how far arthritis patients are safe since they cannot do exercise also?
Sure. So arthritis patients, if they are on steroids have an impact of suppressing the immune system. So they have to be careful about this. So therefore, it is important that patients who are on steroid-induced therapy in arthritis be extra cautious, extra careful in preventing this infection by following the SMS procedure as already discussed. But other than that, arthritis patients who are taking just regular painkillers, but not steroid-based or opioid-based analgesics, so they are okay. They can continue to exercise even within the home, so that the regular walking, there is no need to do a jogging or a brisk walking. Just regular walking is absolutely fine.
Okay. There is a continuation for the second last question. That is, those people without symptoms, will they be cured automatically?
Yes, absolutely. Patients who don't develop the symptom, yes, if they are exposed to a small amount of virus, they remain asymptomatic positive cases. Many a times we don't even get to know of them. But very important, they will continue to wear the mask. That is important. They'll continue to follow sanitization procedures, hand washing procedures. But they will not infect anyone because they are wearing the mask, they're following sanitization measures, and they're following social distancing. So if we follow social distancing, mask, and proper hand washing and sanitization, even an infected person cannot infect another person. Very, very important to remember. And because they are exposed to the virus, the body's immune system will naturally develop antibodies and they will gain immunity. Absolutely nothing to worry.
Sir, next question is, what is the chance of recurrence of this COVID-19 infection? Correct.
It's a good question. It is a recently detected virus, and hence our experience with this virus is limited to only the last 7 to 8 months of knowledge. That's all. Now, the most recent trials or studies have revealed, and I can share with you a little information from one of the ongoing clinical trials, which is going on. They had 2 sets of patients. One set of patients received a single shot of a vaccine, trial vaccine. Another set of patients in the same trial received 2 vaccines. So one as a booster dose of a vaccine. What they found is that the set of patients who received a single dose of a vaccine basically had antibodies in their blood. 90% of them had antibodies in the blood at the end of 3 months. Whereas the ones who received booster dose, 100% of them continued to have antibodies in their blood at the end of 3 months, right? Now, it is not known how many people will continue to have a longer term immunity against this virus. That will only be known in due course, only time will tell. But as of now, all vaccines in development have been tested for a minimum of 3 months of antibody titer being present in them. So therefore, a vaccine which is able to meet that criteria of 3 months and then going on to about 6 months of antibody titer in the blood currently is considered to be effective.
Okay, sir. Next question. It is heard that some homeo medicines can prevent from COVID-19. They're expecting your opinion on this, sir.
So I'm not a qualified homeopathic doctor, so I'll not be able to comment on whether it is right or not right. I don't think that is right. Of course, the information what I have is there is a medicine called arsenic album, which people commonly consider to be effective. My advice on this is, number one, this medicine is not approved by any regulatory authority worldwide as a cure for COVID-19 infection. So therefore, please do not consider it as a medicine to cure COVID-19 infection. All of you would have known what happened to the story of one of the herbal companies, right, which all of us are aware, Patanjali. So they came up with a medicine with a claim that it's a herbal medicine that cures COVID-19, and it actually went through a significant regulatory review with the Ayush Ministry, and later on they said no, it is not approved as a cure for COVID infection. At best, it can certainly be used as a preventive measure, as an immune booster against potentially developing a COVID infection. So I would kind of have a very similar example even for arsenic album. I would say that It may at best be used as a preventive tool to boost the immunity and to take care of most commonly seen viral infections. But none of the homeopathic or Ayurvedic medicines are approved by any global or local regulatory authority as a cure for COVID-19 infection as yet. So therefore, it should not be considered a cure.
Thank you, sir. Next question. What is your take on the latest saliva test to detect COVID?
Sure. I think this is another very interesting technology. As I mentioned to you, there are technologies which are helping detect COVID versus non-COVID pneumonia using chest X-ray images and CT scan images. I'm sure similarly, saliva does have I would say a good promise, because even when we take a throat swab, the throat has got a part of saliva in it. When we take a nasal discharge, it has got the nasal mucus in it. So, however, the sensitivity and specificity of a saliva-based test should always be established through a randomized controlled clinical trial in comparison with RT-PCR, which is the gold standard for detecting whether a patient is positive or not. So until and unless this randomized controlled clinical trial is done in comparison with the gold standard, it should never be launched with a 100% claim that it is a diagnostic procedure. So that clinical trial is very important to conduct. And if the clinical trial reveals that yes, a patient who has a positive report from the saliva test is also showing positive report in RT-PCR, yes, then I think there is enough evidence to get in that direction. But until now, we don't have a trial of that nature. So therefore, it should not be concluded that saliva test is conclusive enough. Trials are required to establish that.
Okay, sir. Next question. Is frequent nasal filtration is good as a prevention? Frequent nasal filtration.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think there are these people who follow this, the yoga and technique, right, of passing the thread through the nose and bringing it through the throat and vice versa. And there is also, I think, there is also the water that it passes through the nose and comes out through the mouth. So I think these are good, I would say, techniques which have come from several generations, from thousands of years, through proponents of yoga, Ayurveda, naturopathy, etc. All of them certainly have a huge role to play with local hygiene being maintained, and it helps ward off multiple types of infections. But can it be used to prevent a coronavirus infection? There is no data to say so. So like it may prevent any other viral infection, it may prevent possibly different types of infections caused by microbes. So we can't just say that it is one of the, I would say, preventive tools or techniques available against corona.
So next question is, which is the most reliable test for corona identification?
RT-PCR.
RT-PCR, okay. So we got that much questions. Participants, if you have any more questions, you can type in the chat box.
But I would like to say that there is a lot of research that is going on, and I'm sure there are quite a few young researchers and technologists who are on this program. I would encourage that. I think this is the best time for a lot of healthcare innovations that can come from our country. I can talk to you about some of the wonderful entrepreneurs who have come up with some great novel solutions. Indian entrepreneurs who have come up with novel solutions. There is an entrepreneur in Mumbai who has come up with a nanotechnology based medical fabric, and he manufactures fabric masks which have been tested in laboratories against SARS-CoV-2. And the moment SARS-CoV-2 active virus comes in contact with this fabric mask, it is instantly killed. Okay, so it's a COVID killing mask which he has invented. He also manufactures medical gowns, medical uniforms, operation theater gowns, and patient gowns, especially for patients like dialysis patients, etc., who need to be undergoing this dialysis procedure for 4 to 6 hours. So these are medically hygienic gowns with antimicrobial properties. There are only 3 companies in the world doing it. 2 are in Israel, 1 is in India. So that kind of a technology this person has developed, this company has developed based in Mumbai. Similarly, there's another company based in Bangalore, which also has the anti-COVID mask or the COVID killing mask. Also, they've developed, it's a very breathable mask. I have a couple of them myself. I use it on a daily basis. Very comfortable, breathable. And the moment the virus comes in contact with the surface, it has within about 2 to 3 seconds, it has a great opportunity. I mean, it has an ability to kill the virus instantly. So masks, there's a lot of thing going on. Vaccines, you know that at least 8 to 9 companies are making honest efforts to develop a vaccine for managing this virus. There is also a lot of work going on in technology. So Indian companies have now come up with ventilators, oxygen concentrators, thermometers, digital thermometers, etc., which are very, very critical to save lives and to monitor patients from home. There are a couple of things which are disrupting Indian healthcare, as all of you know. E-pharmacies are growing in a big way. So anything which is able to take healthcare to the home of a patient, be it delivery of medicines, be it delivery of lab investigations at home, I think that is going to see a significant growth. We're already seeing that. We are also seeing that home care companies are also able to deliver services at home, especially for patients who can't move or for patients who are apprehensive of going to a hospital of contracting infections by actually physically going to visiting a hospital. I think that's a great development. Last but not the least, I already mentioned this early on in the talk about telemedicine and teleconsultation. So companies like Practo, Librate, Instadoc, DocInsta, Call the Doc, etc. They have seen an unprecedented 600% growth in the number of patients seeking active telemedicine consultations from their doctors using a telemedicine platform. So Practo is almost doing close to 15 to 16,000 consultations a day. And I think put together is a huge growth of technology-based, healthcare consultation that is happening in the country today. So that way, I think it's a great moment for Indian entrepreneurs to prove to the world that we are able to develop innovations in the wake of adversity. And I think that is a great achievement from all our entrepreneurs and innovators. And I think there can be more coming from this team as well.
Thank you, sir. Participants, the feedback form is given in the chat box. You can fill that form. Sabik sir? Sabik sir?
Yes.
Shall we conclude or?
Yeah, you can wait. If any more questions are there, you can just ask. If anybody is having, if they want to ask directly also, they can unmute and they can ask.
Okay.
No problem. Any participants, if any question, you can ask directly also by unmuting your mic. If no questions means we can wind up. No problem. Shabira ma'am, you can wind up.
So I think no more questions. So with this, we are coming to the end of this webinar in our webinar series. So this was need of this hour, that is simple tips to win over the pandemic. So our resource person, Karthik, has started from the virus, that is what is this virus, how this virus behaves and all. And he explained how it spread, its incubation period, symptoms, different kind of test and all. And he has given some tips on how to manage the condition, the prevention techniques, and the food that improves our immunity and all. And he has cleared the participants' doubts very clearly. So first of all, I thank our resource person, Karthik, for giving us the opportunity to talk with you. And
Thank you.
The entire IEEE MSS, thank you, sir, for this wonderful session. And all other participants, without you, the session would not be a success. So I thank all of you on behalf of IEEE MSS. Thank you all.